The conscription. The day the skies over Earth filled with alien ships was not the day humanity made first contact. That had happened years earlier, when a small diplomatic envoy from the Galactic Concordat had touched down in a carefully orchestrated meeting with world leaders. No, the day the skies filled with ships was the day humanity realized just how insignificant they were in the grand scheme of things. Admiral Zara Chen stood on the roof of the United Earth Defense Headquarters, her eyes fixed on the looming shapes that blotted out the stars. The ships of the Orcs Dominion hung there like a silent threat, their sleek forms a stark contrast to the crude rockets and shuttles that made up Earth's fledgling space force. "They're not here to talk, are they?" General Marcus Okafor's voice was grim as he joined her at the railing. Zara shook her head. "No, they're not. This is a show of force." As if on cue, a beam of light shot down from the largest ship, projecting a holographic image that towered over the city. The alien that appeared was vaguely reptilian, with scales that shimmered in iridescent patterns and eyes that seemed to glow with an inner fire. "People of Earth," the alien's voice boomed, somehow perfectly translated into every language on the planet simultaneously. "I am High Commander Xal of the Orcs Dominion. Your world now stands at a crossroads. The galaxy is at war, and neutrality is no longer an option." Zara's fists clenched. They had known this day might come, but not so soon. Humanity had barely taken its first steps into interstellar space, and now they were being dragged into a conflict they barely understood. The holographic Xal continued, his voice filled with a mixture of condescension and threat. "The Orcs Dominion requires your immediate and unconditional support in our war against the Vrol Confederation. Your species will provide troops, resources, and unwavering loyalty to our cause. In return, we will grant you protection and a place in the new galactic order we will forge." General Okafor snorted. "Protection. Right. More like they'll use us as cannon fodder." Zara nodded grimly. "They see us as expendable, primitive, but we don't have a choice, do we?" Before Okafor could respond, the hologram shifted, showing scenes of devastation on alien worlds. Cities reduced to ash, entire continents scared by orbital bombardment. "This," Xal's voice intoned, "is the fate that awaits those who stand against us, or who refuse to stand with us. You have one planetary rotation to submit your unconditional agreement. Choose wisely." As the hologram faded, leaving the night sky eerily empty once more, Zara turned to Okafor. "Gather the council. We need to make a decision, and fast." The next 24 hours were a blur of emergency meetings, frantic communications with world leaders, and heated debates that threatened to tear apart the fragile global unity humanity had managed to forge in recent years. In the end, the decision was made not by any one person or nation, but by the cold, hard reality of their situation. Earth would fight. 3 months later, Zara found herself aboard the Orcs command ship, surrounded by aliens who looked at her and her fellow human officers with barely disguised contempt. She stood at rigid attention as High Commander Xal addressed the assembled military leaders. "Our new allies," Xal said, the word dripping with sarcasm, "will be deployed to the fringe sectors. Their primitive technology and lack of combat experience make them unsuitable for anything more crucial." Zara bit her tongue, knowing that any protest would fall on deaf ears. The Orcs saw humans as little more than warm bodies to throw at the enemy, a species so far behind in the technological race that they were barely worth considering as sentient. As the meeting dragged on, outlining strategies and battle plans that treated human forces as little more than a distraction, Zora's mind raced. The Orcs had provided some basic weapons and equipment, but nothing close to their most advanced technology. They clearly expected the humans to fail, to be crushed under the might of the Vrol Confederation. But what the Orcs couldn't understand, was the depths of human determination and ingenuity. As Zara listened to the condescending plans, a spark of defiance ignited in her chest. They might see humans as primitive, as expendable, but she knew better. Humanity had fought wars for millennia. They had clawed their way up from stone tools to spaceflight in a fraction of the time it had taken other species. They had faced extinction-level threats and survived. And now, thrown into a war they didn't want, against enemies they didn't know, they would do what humans had always done. They would adapt. They would innovate. And they would survive. As the meeting concluded, Zara caught the eye of Captain Elena Rodriguez, her second in command. A silent understanding passed between them. They would play along for now. They would take their outdated ships and their limited weapons to the fringe sectors. But once there, far from the watchful eyes of their Orcs allies, they would show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. The next few weeks were a flurry of activity as Earth's hastily assembled space fleet prepared for departure. Zara watched with a mixture of pride and apprehension as thousands of volunteers, soldiers, scientists, engineers, and civilians from every corner of the globe boarded the ships that would take them to the stars. On the day of launch, Zara stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, Earth's flagship. It was a cobbled-together vessel, part human ingenuity, part reverse-engineered alien tech. As the countdown began, she addressed her crew. "We didn't ask for this war," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the ship and to the fleets beyond. "We didn't want it. But now that we're in it, we're going to show these aliens what humans are made of. They think we're primitive. Let's prove them wrong. They think we're expendable. Let's make ourselves indispensable. Whatever happens out there, remember this. We are humanity, and humanity does not go quietly into the night." A cheer went up throughout the fleet, a sound of defiance and determination that seemed to shake the very stars. As the engines roared to life and the ships of Earth rose into the sky, Zara allowed herself a small, grim smile. The Orcs had made a grave mistake in dragging humanity into this war. Soon, very soon, they would realize just how badly they had underestimated the species they saw as nothing more than cannon fodder. The age of humanity's subservience was over before it had truly begun. Now, the galaxy would learn to tremble at the approach of human ships. The war was about to change in ways no one, human or alien, could possibly predict. First contact, first blood. The journey to the fringe sectors was a baptism by fire for the newly minted human space fleet. The Orcs, true to their word, had provided only the barest minimum of training and equipment. The human ships, a hodgepodge of retrofitted Earth vessels and hastily constructed alien designs, limped through space like wounded animals. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Intrepid, her eyes fixed on the swirling vortex of a wormhole that would take them to their assigned sector. The ship shuddered as it entered the anomaly, and Elena gritted her teeth, praying that the untested systems would hold together. "Status report," she barked as they emerged on the other side, stars wheeling dizzyingly around them. Her science officer, Dr. Amit Patel, ran his hands over his console, his brow furrowed. "All systems operational, Captain. But there's something odd about the sensor readings in this sector." Elena leaned forward. "Odd how?" Before Emmett could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. Multiple contacts. The tactical officer shouted, "Vrol signatures, closing fast." Elena's mind raced. They weren't supposed to encounter enemy forces this soon. The Orcs had assured them that the fringe sectors were relatively quiet, perfect for breaking in the primitive humans. "Battle stations," Elena ordered, her voice calm despite the panic threatening to overwhelm her. "All ships, defensive formation Delta. Prepare for engagement." As the human fleet scrambled to respond, the first volley of roll weapons fire lanced through space. The UES Dauntless, bringing up the rear of the formation, took a direct hit. Elena watched in horror as the ship's hull breached, atmosphere venting into the void. "Return fire," she commanded. "All batteries, target the lead Vrol vessel." The human ships opened up with everything they had, a desperate barrage of missiles and energy weapons, Most missed their targets, the crews still unused to the complexities of space combat. But a few found their mark, and Alina allowed herself a moment of hope as she saw a Vrol ship's shields flicker and fail. The battle raged for what felt like hours, a chaotic dance of light and destruction against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars. The human fleet was outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought with a ferocity that seemed to take the Vrol by surprise. As the Intrepid shook from another near miss, Alina had an idea. "Dr. Patel," she called out, "those sensor anomalies you mentioned, could they be used to our advantage?" Amit's eyes widened as he caught on to her thinking. "Yes, there's a gravitational distortion about half a light second to our port. If we could lure the Vrol ships there." "Do it," Alina ordered. "All ships, follow our lead. We're going to use this sector against them." What followed was a masterclass in improvisation. The human fleet, moving as one, drew the Vrol into the heart of the gravitational anomaly. As the enemy ships entered the distortion, their weapons fire began to curve and twist, missing the human vessels by wider and wider margins. Alina allowed herself a grim smile. "Now, all ships, concentrate fire on the lead Vrol vessel." The combined firepower of the human fleet, focused through the lens of the gravitational anomaly, struck the Vrol flagship like the hammer of an angry god. The alien ship's shields collapsed, and its hull crumpled under the onslaught. As the Vrol flagship died in a spectacular explosion, the rest of their fleet seemed to lose cohesion. Within minutes, they were in full retreat, leaving behind the wreckage of their comrades and a stunned human fleet. The bridge of the Intrepid erupted in cheers, but Alina remained focused. "Damage report," she demanded. The news was sobering. They had lost 3 ships, with several others heavily damaged. But they had survived their first true engagement, and against all odds they had won. As the adrenaline of battle faded, Alina opened a channel to Admiral Chen on the Defiant. "Admiral," she reported, "the Vrol force has been repelled. We've suffered losses, but—" She paused, allowing a note of pride to enter her voice. "We've held the sector." Admiral Chen's face on the view screen was a mixture of relief and grim determination. "Well done, Captain. But this is just the beginning. Prepare your after-action reports. I want every detail of how you managed to pull this off." As Alina signed off, she looked around at her battered but unbowed crew. They had been thrown into the deep end, expected to drown. Instead, they had not only survived but triumphed. It was a small victory in the grand scheme of the war, but it was theirs. Word of the human fleet's unexpected success spread quickly. On the Arxer command ship, High Commander Xal received the report with a mixture of disbelief and grudging respect. "It seems," he muttered to his advisors, "that we may have underestimated these humans." One of his lieutenants, a grizzled veteran named Fricks, snorted in derision. "A fluke," he dismissed. "They got lucky. The Vrol were careless." Xal's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps, but luck favors the prepared. Have the human ships outfitted with better weapons and shields. I want to see what they can do when they're not fighting with one arm tied behind their backs." As the orders went out, the human fleet in the fringe sectors began to change. The battered ships were repaired and upgraded, their crews growing more confident with each passing day. They had tasted victory, and they hungered for more. On Earth, the news of the fleet's success was met with a mixture of jubilation and grim determination. Recruitment centers were flooded with volunteers, and factories worked around the clock to produce more ships and weapons. In laboratories and workshops across the planet, human scientists and engineers pored over the alien technology they had been given, looking for ways to improve and adapt it. They were no longer content to simply use what they were given. They wanted to understand it, to make it their own. Back in the fringe sectors, Alina and her fellow captains began to experiment with new tactics. They studied the Vrol, learning their strengths and weaknesses. They mapped the gravitational anomalies and other quirks of their assigned space, turning the very fabric of the sector into a weapon. As the weeks turned into months, the human fleet's reputation grew. They were no longer seen as easy prey, but as a force to be reckoned with. The Vrol began to approach the fringe sectors with caution, wary of the unpredictable and surprisingly effective human defenders. But not everyone was pleased with humanity's rising star. Among the Orcs, there were those who viewed the human success with suspicion and resentment. They had expected cannon fodder, not potential rivals. In the shadows of the Orcs command ship, Vrix gathered a group of like-minded officers. "These humans are becoming a problem," he hissed. "They're not content to simply die for our cause. They're starting to think they can win this war." One of his conspirators, a young and ambitious officer named Jal, leaned forward. "What do you propose we do about it?" Vrix's eyes glittered with malice. "We give them a real test, something they can't possibly survive. And when they fail, when they're broken and bleeding, we'll remind them of their place in this war and in the galaxy." As the conspirators plotted, unaware that their own arrogance would soon be their undoing, the human fleet continued to grow stronger. They had survived their baptism by fire, but the true test was yet to come. In her quarters aboard the Intrepid, Elena Rodriguez looked out at the stars, a datapad filled with tactical reports in her hand. She couldn't shake the feeling that something big was coming. But unlike those first terrifying days after leaving Earth, she no longer felt unprepared. "Let them come," she whispered to the void. "Whatever they throw at us, we'll be ready." Little did she know, the galaxy was about to learn just the turning point. The Orcs' high command ship Dominance hung in orbit around the gas giant Theta 9, its sleek form a stark contrast to the swirling storms of the planet below. In the ship's war room, High Commander Xal stood before a holographic display of the fringe sectors, his scaled hands clasped behind his back. "Report," he growled, eyes fixed on a cluster of red icons representing Vrol forces. A junior officer stepped forward, nervousness evident in the twitch of his tail. "The Vrol have launched a major offensive in Sector 17, sir. They've already overrun 3 of our outposts." Xal's eyes narrowed. Sector 17 was where they had stationed a significant portion of the human fleet. He'd been curious to see how the unpredictable species would fare against a real threat. Now, it seemed, he would get his answer. "What of the human forces?" he asked. The officer hesitated. We're not sure, sir. Our last communication from them was garbled. Something about going dark and preparing a surprise." A low hiss escaped Xal's throat. These humans and their penchant for disobedience. He should never have allowed them such autonomy. "Send in the 5th Fleet," he ordered. "If the humans have fled or been destroyed, we need to contain this Vrol advance." As the orders were relayed, Xal couldn't shake a nagging feeling. The humans had proven surprisingly resilient so far. What were they planning? In the depths of Sector 17, aboard the UES Defiant, Admiral Zara Chen stood before her own tactical display. The hologram showed the advancing Vrol fleet, a seemingly unstoppable tide of destruction sweeping through the sector. "Status report," she demanded. Her tactical officer, a young lieutenant named Javier Ortiz, responded crisply. "Operation Trojan Horse is in full effect. Admiral, all ships are in position and powered down. The Vrol don't appear to have detected us." Zara nodded, a grim smile playing at the corners of her mouth. It was a risky plan, born of desperation and human ingenuity. When they'd realized the size of the Vrol force bearing down on them, they'd known that a direct confrontation would be suicide. So instead, they'd opted for deception. The entire human fleet had scattered throughout the sector, each ship hiding in the shadow of a moon, asteroid, or spatial anomaly. They'd powered down all non-essential systems, making themselves virtually invisible to Vrol sensors. Now they waited, a minefield of dormant warships ready to spring to life. "And the bait?" Zara asked. Elena Rodriguez, now serving as Zara's second-in-command, stepped forward. "The automated distress beacons are working perfectly. As far as the Vrol know, we're in full retreat, leaving behind a trail of disabled ships." It was a classic Trojan horse, adapted for space warfare. The Vrol, thinking they'd stumbled upon easy prey, would spread out to capture or destroy the seemingly helpless human vessels. And when they did, all ships, final checks, Zara ordered. Prepare to execute on my mark. Minutes ticked by, feeling like hours. On the tactical display, they watched as the Vrol fleet began to disperse, individual ships and small squadrons breaking off to investigate the fake distress signals. Now, Zora breathed. Execute Operation Trojan Horse. Across Sector 17, human ships roared to life. Engines that had been cold for hours ignited with a vengeance. Weapon systems powered up, targeting the nearest Vrol vessels before they could even register the threat. The first wave of attacks was devastating. Dozens of Vrol ships, caught completely off guard, were destroyed or disabled in the opening minutes. The carefully coordinated ambush threw the entire Vrol fleet into chaos. But the humans weren't done yet. As the Vrol struggled to regroup, the human fleet implemented the second phase of their plan. Ships that had been modified with experimental cloaking technology, reverse-engineered from captured Vrol scouts, slipped behind enemy lines. They targeted command and control vessels, communications relays, and supply ships. On the bridge of the Defiant, Zara watched with a mixture of pride and grim satisfaction as her plan unfolded. The Vrol fleet, which had seemed so unstoppable mere hours ago, was now in complete disarray. Move in the heavy cruisers, she ordered. Let's finish this. As the battle raged on, news of the human counterattack spread quickly. On the Arxer command ship, High Commander Xal received the reports with growing disbelief. Impossible, he muttered, watching as the tactical display showed Vrol ships blinking out of existence at an alarming rate. How could they have? His thoughts were interrupted by an incoming transmission. The holographic form of Admiral Chen appeared before him, her expression a mixture of determination and barely concealed triumph. High Commander, she said, her voice steady. I'm pleased to report that the Vrol offensive in Sector 17 has been neutralized. We've destroyed or captured over 60% of their fleet. The rest are in full retreat. Xal struggled to keep his composure. This was beyond anything he had expected from the humans. How? He demanded. You were outnumbered and outgunned. A small smile played at the corners of Zora's mouth. We used our strengths, High Commander. Creativity. Adaptability. The willingness to take risks. You gave us a sector to defend, and we defended it. As the transmission ended, Xal turned to his stunned officers. I want a full analysis of this battle, he ordered. Every tactic, every strategy. I want to know exactly how they pulled this off. In the aftermath of what would come to be known as the Battle of Sector 17, the perception of humanity's role in the war underwent a seismic shift. The Arxer High Command, which had seen humans as little more than cannon fodder, now viewed them with a mixture of respect and wariness. The Vrol, who had dismissed humans as primitive newcomers, now approached human-held sectors with extreme caution. For humanity, the victory was a turning point. They had proven, beyond any doubt, that they were not just capable of surviving in this war, they could change its course. The innovative tactics employed in Sector 17 were quickly adopted and adapted across the human fleet. Engineers and scientists worked tirelessly to refine the cloaking technology and other innovations born of the battle. But with success came new challenges. As news of the victory spread, some within the Arxer Dominion began to view humans not as valuable allies, but as potential threats. The same creativity and adaptability that had won the day in Sector 17 could, they feared, one day be turned against the Arxer themselves. In the shadows of the Arxer command ship, Vrix and his conspirators met once again. This changes everything, Xal hissed. If the humans continue to gain power and influence. Vrix cut him off with a sharp gesture. Then we must ensure they don't, he said, his voice low and dangerous. The humans have proven useful, but they must be reminded of their place. We'll give them more responsibility, yes, but we'll also test them, push them to their limits and beyond. Sooner or later, they'll falter. And when they do, we'll be there to put them back in their place. As the conspirators plotted, unaware that their own actions would soon set in motion events beyond their control, the human fleet celebrated their victory. But for leaders like Zora Chen and Elena Rodriguez, the celebration was tempered by the knowledge that this was just the beginning. They had won a great battle, but the war was far from over. The Vrol would regroup, adapt, and come back stronger. The Arxer, while outwardly congratulatory, would be watching them more closely than ever. And somewhere out there, amid the stars, greater challenges awaited. In her quarters aboard the Defiant, Zara looked out at the vastness of space, a datapad with casualty reports in her hand. The victory had come at a cost. Good people, brave soldiers, had died to make it happen. But their sacrifice had not been in vain. They had shown the galaxy what humanity was capable of. Whatever comes next, Zara whispered to the void, "We'll be ready. We're humanity, and we're just getting started." As the human fleet regrouped and began to repair the damage from the battle, none of them could have predicted the true magnitude of the changes their victory had set in motion. The galaxy, which had once seen humans as insignificant latecomers to the cosmic stage, was about to learn just how quickly the balance of power could shift. The age of humanity had begun, and the stars themselves would tremble in its wake. Rising through the ranks, the Arxer Central Command Station, a massive structure hanging in the void between stars, bustled with activity. In a high-security conference room, High Commander Xal faced a gathering of his top military leaders. The atmosphere was tense, filled with unspoken concerns and simmering resentment. The humans have proven themselves far more capable than we initially believed. Xal began, his voice a low growl. Their victory in Sector 17 has shifted the balance of power in the fringe. We can no longer treat them as mere cannon fodder. A murmur of discontent rippled through the assembled officers. General Vrix, his scales darkened with age and battle scars, stepped forward. With all due respect, High Commander, are we truly considering elevating these primitives to positions of real authority? Xal's eyes narrowed. We are considering utilizing our resources effectively, General. The humans have demonstrated tactical brilliance and adaptability that our own forces would do well to emulate. As the debate raged on, the decision was made. Humanity would be given greater responsibilities, more advanced technology, and leadership roles in upcoming campaigns. Not everyone was pleased with this development, but even the most skeptical Arxer had to admit that the humans had earned their place at the table. Thousands of light years away, on the newly established human forward base in Sector 20, Admiral Zara Chen stood before a holographic display of the front lines. Around her, a mix of human and Arxer officers worked in an uneasy alliance. The Vrol have fortified their positions along this corridor, Zara explained, highlighting a swath of space. They're expecting us to attack head-on, as we've done in previous engagements. An Arxer commander, his name unpronounceable to human tongues, chittered in agreement. A frontal assault would be suicide. Even with our combined fleets, the casualties would be unacceptable. Zara allowed herself a small smile, which is exactly why we're not going to give them what they expect. She manipulated the hologram, zooming in on a particular star system. We're going to use what we've learned about Vrol psychology against them. As Zara outlined her plan, a complex series of feints, misdirections, and carefully orchestrated leaks of false information, the assembled officers listened with growing interest and, in some cases, grudging respect. Captain Elena Rodriguez, now commanding her own battlecruiser, the UES Audacity, chimed in from her position at the table. We've also been working on some new tech that could give us an edge. Dr. Patel. Dr. Amit Patel, now heading a joint human Arxer research team, stepped forward. We've managed to reverse engineer and improve upon the Vrol's quantum entanglement communication system. This will allow our fleet to coordinate in real time, even when separated by vast distances. The Arxer officers exchanged glances, a mixture of impressed and wary. One of them, a younger commander named Zhal, spoke up. "And how do we know this technology won't be used against us in the future?" The room fell silent, the underlying tension suddenly brought to the surface. Zara met Zhal's gaze steadily. "Because we're allies," she said firmly. "We're in this war together. Humanity has no interest in fighting the Orcs. Our enemy is the Vrol, and that's where our focus remains." The moment passed, but the undercurrent of distrust lingered. As the meeting concluded and officers filed out, Zara pulled Elena aside. "Keep an eye on Zhal and his cohorts," she murmured. "I don't think everyone is as committed to this alliance as we'd like." Elena nodded grimly. "Already on it, Admiral. We've got ears and eyes everywhere we can. But we need to be careful if the Orcs think we're spying on them." "I know," Zora sighed. "It's a delicate balance, but we can't afford to be caught off guard. Not when we're so close to turning the tide of this war." As the days turned to weeks, preparations for the major offensive ramped up. Human ships, now integrated with advanced Orcs technology, trained alongside their alien counterparts. On the surface, it was a picture of interspecies cooperation. But beneath the veneer of unity, cracks were beginning to show. In the Orcs fleet, rumors spread about the humans' rapid advancements. Some spoke in odd tones of human ingenuity, of how they seemed to master alien tech almost overnight. Others whispered darker thoughts, that the humans were getting too powerful, too quickly, that they couldn't be trusted. Among the human forces, there was a growing sense of frustration. Despite their proven capabilities, they often found themselves second-guessed by Orcs commanders, their suggestions dismissed or altered. The technology sharing, while improved, still felt one-sided. On the bridge of the Audacity, Elena watched her mixed human Orcs crew with a critical eye. They worked together efficiently, but there was a tension in the air, a sense of forced politeness that never quite faded. "Status report," she called out, pushing aside her concerns to focus on the task at hand. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, responded crisply. "All systems nominal, Captain. The new quantum entanglement comms are online and functioning at 100% efficiency. We're ready for the war games." Elena nodded. The upcoming simulated battle would be a test not just of their new technology and tactics, but of the alliance itself. Human and Orcs ships would be working together more closely than ever before, under the watchful eyes of high-ranking officers from both species. As the Audacity moved into position, Elena couldn't shake a feeling of unease. This was more than just a military exercise. It was a political statement, a demonstration of what humans and Orcs could accomplish together. If it succeeded, it would cement humanity's new role in the war effort. If it failed, she pushed the thought aside. Failure wasn't an option, not with so much at stake. The war games began, a sprawling, complex dance of ships and strategies. At first, everything went according to plan. The human Orcs fleet moved with precision, executing maneuvers that would have been impossible just months ago. But as the simulation progressed, cracks began to show. An Orcs commander, bristling at taking orders from a human captain, delayed a crucial attack run. A human gunner, still not fully trained on Orcs weaponry, miscalculated a targeting solution. Small mistakes began to compound, threatening to unravel the entire operation. In the command center, overseeing the war games, Zora watched with growing concern. She could see the potential, flashes of brilliance when human creativity meshed perfectly with Orcs discipline. But she could also see the mistrust, the hesitation, the subtle power plays that threatened to tear the alliance apart. As the simulation reached its climax, with the combined fleet facing the simulated Vrol superweapon, Zara made a decision. She opened a channel to all ships, her voice ringing out across the battlefield. "This is Admiral Chen. All ships, disregard previous command structure. From this moment, you are no longer human or Orcs. You are one fleet with one purpose. Work together, adapt, overcome. Show me, show all of us, what we can truly accomplish when we put aside our differences and focus on our common goal." For a moment, there was silence. Then, slowly at first, but with growing confidence, the fleet began to move as one. Human captains called out suggestions that Arxer commanders quickly implemented. Arxer weapons officers worked in perfect sync with human tactical teams. The simulated Vrol forces, programmed to exploit any weakness or hesitation, found themselves facing a truly unified opponent for the first time. In the end, the combined fleet emerged victorious. The simulated superweapon destroyed, and the Vrol forces routed. As the all-clear signal sounded, a cheer went up across the comms, human and Arxer voices mingling in shared triumph. In the aftermath of the war games, as data was analyzed and reports were filed, a new sense of cautious optimism began to spread through both human and Arxer ranks. They had seen what was possible when they truly worked together, and it was far greater than anything they could have accomplished alone. But not everyone shared in the newfound spirit of cooperation. In the shadows of the Arxer command ship, Vrix and his conspirators met once again. "This has gone too far," Vrix hissed. "The humans are no longer content to be our weapons. They seek to be our equals, perhaps even our superiors." Jal, his earlier skepticism now hardened into resolve, nodded in agreement. "We must act soon, before they become too entrenched, too essential to the war effort." As the conspirators plotted, unaware that their own actions would soon trigger a chain of events beyond their control, the combined human Arxer fleet prepared for their greatest test yet. The upcoming offensive against the Vrol would be more than just a military operation. It would be a statement to the entire galaxy that humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they were here to stay. In her quarters aboard the Defiant, Zara Chen looked out at the assembled fleet, human and Arxer ships side by side. They had come so far, overcome so much, but the real challenge was just beginning. "Whatever happens next," she whispered to the void, "we're in this together. For better or for worse." As the fleet prepared to jump to light speed, the fate of not just the war, but of the entire galaxy hung in the balance. The age of humanity was about to face its greatest test, and the outcome would reshape the cosmos itself. The final push. The vast expanse of space around the Vrol homeworld. Zalthoris crackled with tension. Thousands of ships, a mix of human, Arxer, and other allied species, hung in the void, their weapons primed and spirits steeled for the battle to come. This was it, the final push to end the war that had consumed the galaxy for so long. Aboard the UES Defiant, now the flagship of the Allied fleet, Admiral Zara Chen stood before a holographic display of the Vrol Defense Network. It was a formidable sight. Layers upon layers of battle stations, minefields, and automated defense platforms protecting the Vrol homeworld. "One final briefing," Zara announced, her voice carrying to every ship in the fleet via the quantum entanglement comms. "This is the moment we fought for, bled for. The Vrol think their homeworld is impregnable. Today, we prove them wrong." As she outlined the battle plan, a complex orchestration of feints, surgical strikes, and overwhelming force, Zara couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them here. From reluctant conscripts to the spearhead of the Allied forces, humanity had come so far in so little time. "Remember," she concluded, her voice firm, "we're not just fighting for ourselves anymore. We're fighting for every species that has suffered under Vrol oppression. We're fighting for a future where the galaxy knows peace. Now, let's make history." As the transmission ended, Captain Elena Rodriguez, commanding the battlecruiser UES Audacity, turned to her mixed crew of humans and aliens. "You heard the Admiral," she said, a fierce grin on her face. "Let's show the galaxy what we can do." The battle began with a series of coordinated strikes on the outer defense grid. Human stealth ships, their hulls shimmering with reverse-engineered Vrol cloaking technology, slipped past the first layer of defenses. They struck at key command and control nodes, sowing chaos and confusion among the Vrol defenders. As alarms blared across the Vrol fleet, the main Allied force surged forward. Arxer dreadnoughts, their hulls bristling with weapons, unleashed devastating barrages that shattered defense platforms and scattered fighter squadrons. Human ships darted between the lumbering alien vessels, their more agile designs allowing them to exploit gaps in the Vrol formation. On the bridge of the Defiant, Zara watched the battle unfold with intense focus. "Sector 7 is weakening," she called out. "All ships in Attack Group Delta converge on these coordinates. Push through that gap." As the orders went out, a squadron of Vrol capital ships moved to intercept. They were massive, heavily armed vessels that had been the terror of the galaxy for centuries. But they were met by something they had never faced before: a perfectly coordinated attack force of humans and Arxer, working in flawless harmony. Human ships darted in close, their advanced ECM suites confusing Vrol targeting systems. This allowed the heavily armed Arxer vessels to close in, unleashing devastating broadsides. The Vrol, used to facing enemies that either matched their brute force or tried to outmaneuver them, found themselves caught off guard by this combination of speed, cunning, and raw power. As the battle raged on, the true strength of the human-led alliance became clear. It wasn't just their technology or their tactics. It was their adaptability, their ability to think on their feet and change strategies on the fly. When a Vrol superweapon began to power up, threatening to turn the tide of the battle, it was a joint human Arxer strike team that managed to board the station and disable it from within. When a flanking maneuver threatened to cut off a portion of the Allied fleet, it was the quick thinking of a human captain and the raw power of an Arxer battle group that closed the trap. Hour after hour, the battle raged. The space around Sal Thoris became a graveyard of shattered ships and broken dreams. But slowly, inexorably, the Allied fleet pushed forward. As they breached the final layer of defenses, a transmission came through from the Vrol High Command. On the bridge of the Defiant, Zara faced the holographic image of the Vrol's Supreme Commander, a being of terrifying beauty, with crystalline scales and eyes that burned with alien intelligence. "You have fought well," the Vrol leader said, its voice a mixture of harmonics that sent shivers down human spines. "But surely you must see the futility of your actions. Even if you destroy our fleet, even if you bombard our world, the Vrol will endure. We have done so for millions of years. What hope do you have of truly defeating us?" Zara met the alien's gaze steadily. "We're not here to destroy you," she said, her voice calm but filled with conviction. "We're here to end this war, to show you that there's another way, a way where species can coexist, can work together to build something greater than any one of us could achieve alone." She gestured to her bridge crew, humans working alongside Arxer and other alien species in perfect harmony. "Look at us. A few years ago, we were strangers, enemies even. Now, we stand united. That's the future we're fighting for, not just for ourselves, but for you as well. A galaxy where the Vrol can be part of something greater, rather than trying to dominate it." For a long moment, the Vrol leader was silent, its alien eyes unreadable. Then, slowly, it nodded. Perhaps there is wisdom in your words. We have fought for so long, we had forgotten there could be another way. If you truly offer peace." "We do," Zara said firmly. "Not unconditional surrender, but a chance to build a new future together. Will you take it?" The next few hours were a flurry of negotiations, ceasefire orders, and tense moments as centuries of hostility were cautiously set aside. But in the end, as the Allied fleet hung in orbit around Sal Thoris, no longer as conquerors but as peacekeepers, the impossible had been achieved. The war was over. In the days and weeks that followed, the galaxy began the long, difficult process of rebuilding. The Vrol, their militaristic society now adrift in peacetime, cautiously began to engage in diplomacy and cultural exchange. The Arxer, long accustomed to seeing other species as either enemies or subordinates, had to adjust to a new reality where cooperation was the path forward. And humanity. They found themselves in a position few could have imagined when they were first dragged into the war. They were now seen as mediators, innovators, the species that had bridged the gap between ancient enemies and forged a path to peace. Universities across the galaxy clamored for human professors, eager to understand the creativity and adaptability that had turned the tide of the war. Alien corporations sought human partners, recognizing the unique problem-solving abilities that had allowed them to master advanced technology so quickly. And in the halls of the newly formed Galactic Council, human voices were heard with respect and attention. But with their new status came new responsibilities. Humanity was now a major player on the galactic stage, and their actions would shape the future of countless species. It was a heady, sometimes terrifying prospect. On Earth, now a shining jewel in a network of human colonies spanning multiple star systems, Admiral Zara Chen stood before the United Earth Council. Her uniform was heavy with medals, but her expression was somber. "We've achieved more than we ever dreamed possible," she said, her voice carrying to millions watching the broadcast across human space. "But our journey is far from over. We've shown the galaxy what humanity is capable of in war. Now we must show them what we can do in peace." As she outlined her vision for humanity's role in the new galactic order, as peacekeepers, as innovators, as bridge builders between species, Zara couldn't help but feel a sense of pride mixed with trepidation. The challenges ahead were immense, but so were the opportunities. "We were dragged into this war against our will," she concluded, her eyes bright with determination. "But we chose how to fight it, and we chose how to end it. Now we must choose what kind of galactic citizens we will be. The stars are no longer our limit. They are our home, our responsibility, and our future." As the council chamber erupted in applause, as cheers echoed across human worlds, and alien allies watched with interest, the truth was clear. Humanity had not just survived its trial by fire. It had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to take its place among the stars. The age of humanity had truly begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.